Hey, you are listening to Abyss Gazing, a horror podcast where we celebrate all things spooky and mental health.
I'm your co-host, Mark.
And I'm your co-host Josh, and this is part one to our annual crossover with our friends over at Collateral Cinema Podcast. We're going to be covering rare exports. We're joined by Mr. Ashley Chancellor.
Hey, thanks for having me on.
Thank you for being enough.
Oh, you can see my hoodie.
Barely.
Hell yeah.
But if you guys want to see Ash's hoodie, you guys, all you got to do is join our Patreon at the $5 tier. And that money also helps us bring mental health resources and education into things like film festivals, Comic Cons, horror cons, community centers, after school programs, and more. That's patreon.com/victims and villains. 'Tis the season. So Mark, what is sliding down our chimney for our first part of this crossover?
It sounds kind of wrong the way you say that.
Well, Santa's in captivity, so
So we checked out rare exports, which is kind of awesome.
was this a first time watch for any of you guys?
Yes.
Yeah. I
Okay.
just watched this movie early today.
Yeah, same here. I thought this movie was much older than what it was. Similar to our last episode with Adam Chaplin, we thought that one was like
New.
late 90s.
Oh,
Yeah. Wow.
the-
I
I
thought it
thought
was older than, or
way
we did
they,
think it was newer. Yeah, you're right.
yeah,
This is
because of the way
backwards.
they advertised it, we thought it was newer, but it ended up being older, but it was still a bloody good time.
But you guys can currently stream this on Screenbox among other platforms. But Ash, being our guest for this one, what did you think of this movie?
Oh man, this movie was actually a lot of fun. It was a neat little take on the origins of Santa, kind of getting into some of the more darker Christmas stories that aren't told a lot anymore.
The whole
But
Krampus
yeah,
knockdown.
I mean I loved the whole concept. I liked it was just very visceral.
Okay, Mark, what did you think about this movie?
So it's pretty awesome. It's good. It's fun. Um, I like the concept. Wish there had been more blood and gore. That's my only real complaint.
Yeah.
So I will say this that I think this movie could have been longer and messed out some of the pacing issues I had with the first probably 20 or 20 30 minutes of this movie. But
Well, it's like an hour and 20-minute movie.
yeah, which I wish that they kind of would have done a little bit more with kind of like the digging crew. I felt like they were like a nice opening, and then like it felt like they didn't really get to see anything until like the end of the or like the middle of the movie. It just kind of seemed like they came in a little bit too late. I thought this movie was just okay. I feel like for all the hype that has been in existence about this movie, I expected way more, like on the level of something like, Silent Night, Deadly Night, something a little bit more like of that camp or that cheese that like a lot of people talk, the way that a lot of people talk about this movie.
Sure. I mean, it is pretty short and it doesn't go as far as you might expect something like this to. But I did think that it reached a level of disturbing that was pretty interesting.
So I will give you that because this movie, I feel like for like one of the things that Mark and I we've been doing this for 2 years now, and like every time that we get to like talking about Christmas movies, it's always like every time you get to like the evil Santa, it's always like the same exact thing. Like Christmas, bloody Christmas, he was evil but a robot. Like, it's a wonderful knife that we covered earlier this year. Like there are Christmas movies that we've covered that I'm just kind of like it's repetitive, it's getting tired. Like I liked the aspect of like the mythology of Christmas and how it's portrayed here. I thought that was really refreshing, and I was like, I really wish that you got to see stories like this way more than what we've seen stateside.
Yeah, it's different. I mean, I kind of like The Village. I watched the movie a lot. Like, I'd like to visit there. It seems quiet, but then you have like people terrorizing them. So it's a conflicted train of thought. You okay, Josh?
Mark, you and me are like completely opposite, like in terms of stuff like that, because I like being around a bunch of people, and like I've tried rural life and like living in kind of like secluded areas. It doesn't work for me. Does not work for me. It drives my mental health absolutely bananas.
There's something to be said about peace and quiet and being able to scream, get off my lawn, and able to reinforce it.
I mean, as somebody from a small rural town, it has its advantages and disadvantages. I don't like being around a whole lot of people, but that means that the few people here are of questionable character.
Like I don't know. So like take the character our central character Pietro. If I say
Uh,
that name wrong, I'm sorry. How would you guys say it? Does that sound about right? Pietro?
I don't know.
um, Pietari, right? I think is what he
Uh
said.
sure. I'm just gonna call him Pi. Because the way that it's spelled here
So
is I would
you're talking about
spell it
the kid?
Itari. Yeah.
Let's just call him the kid.
I'm pretty sure it's anyways. Anyways, P. We'll just call it P. The kid. Kid the P. Like being like secluded in that kind of area, like I can't speak to that not being a parent myself and not wanting to be a parent, but I gotta imagine that like to some regards, like being raised in an area like that, you could definitely see like it how do I say like hinders your growth, but like it seems like that's kind of what the film hints at because the very few kids that this village does have all seem to have kind of broken that you know the idea and the concept that Santa Claus isn't real. But then you have Pietri or however you say his name, like uh it's still believing and like still holding on to hope, like the fact that like he has like a bunker dedicated to like watching, and like there are
Oh,
those moments where like he sees the footsteps in the snow and he's like it was Santa Claus.
well,
I
in those kind of villages, though, um, especially more so overseas in like Europe and Asia, the younger they are, the more responsible they are than we are here. I mean, that's a given. But I think he was the younger of all the kids involved in the movie. I think he was the youngest of the
yeah,
bunch too.
he seemed that way. I did either of you think it was weird how quickly they believed him that it was Santa Claus?
That's what I'm telling you, man. Like it was like kind of like it's like the pacing. They're like, all right, we shit, he's just gonna believe that this is Santa Claus. Like, there's not gonna be like no questions or anything. Like, it's Santa Claus. And then like that's my other issue with this film is that as soon as they believe him, this movie just kind of seems to like take all of the adults and like turn them on its head. So like he was
And
kind
we're
of
gonna
like the runt
follow
of
the
the litter.
10-year-old.
Yeah, he was kind of like the runt of the litter. Stated that it was Santa Claus, and then now somehow is like the actual leader of the entire like village.
Operation.
I mean, somebody's got to do it. Why not
I
the
mean,
10-year-old?
you know, was it just me or were there no moms? In fact, I don't think there was a single female character in this movie. Where are the moms?
There were a couple, I think, up in the mining camp, one or two, in like one
Okay.
scene or something, I think. Or am I wrong? I could be wrong.
I mean, and they seem to imply that the mom is gone in that one scene
Same.
between
Dad
Kia,
and son.
whatever the fuck his name is, and
What's his
uh,
name and other what's his name?
Yeah. I mean, like, yeah, the dad's name is like Renato and man,
Just call
Rono,
him Bob.
Bob.
Renaro, yeah.
I got the Wikipedia pulled up, but
That's what I got pulled up to, and I'm just like that. It should be also of note that this movie is like Norwegian or comes from
Finnish, right?
Norway, Finnish, one of the
I thought it
two.
was Finnish. Yeah.
So it is okay. So it is Finnish. Um, but fun fact, it is actually a production over 4 countries, including Finland, Norway, France, and Sweden.
Uh, I do know somebody that's like from that region. And what kind of made it interesting is apparently raising like reindeer is very big over there. And you
Like,
don't
really.
go hunting. Yeah, you don't go hunting for them because they probably belong to somebody and you might end up losing everything if you take one out without permission.
Huh.
So I thought that was interesting from somebody I know. So,
Well, obviously, I think this is kind of more like a chillax episode. We saved all of the heavy conversation for Eyes Wide Shut.
did we
Coming
really?
up.
Did God
Mark,
fucking
Mark,
Kubrick?
Mark, you don't know how prepared I am for this episode for that episode.
I mean, you got to be for Kubrick, right?
Took notes
Do
upon notes
you?
upon notes upon notes. I went through like a 2 hour rabbit hole last night of just YouTube videos and like conspiracy theories about them. But
Nice.
you guys can check that out on the Collateral Cinema Podcast feed in a couple of days. But Ash, you brought up a really interesting point about like the fact that he believes it. Like, what about this tycoon that we meet in the beginning of the movie that is like maybe like 60s and 70s that is like actively hunting for Santa Claus and well into adulthood?
I
It's like
mean, Homeboy
it,
must have seen something during his life that turned everything around for him. I don't know.
he saw mommy kissing more than just Santa Claus. And he's looking for payback.
Yeah.
That's my guess.
I don't know. To me, like it just kind of seemed like a really weird point of like contention for the narrative of this film to be like eh, I don't know, man. It goes back to this like that idea of like the Killing Joke and Joker being like, you're all one bad day away from being me. Like I would love to know like what happened to like his character to like set him on this like lifelong conquest to be like, I'm gonna find Santa and then eventually capture and or kill him. Like it just seems like a really weird uh thing. I
I
don't know.
mean, there's not a lot about the movie that actually makes sense. There's really not.
No, and I don't know that it's necessarily supposed to. I don't think you're supposed to dive too deep into it because, then you have to wonder like if Santa's been frozen all these years, then like what's been going on for all of the time that the Santa mythos has been a thing.
And then the elves are apparently just like evil old men,
Naked,
evil
evil old men.
cannibalistic old men.
I almost texted our group chat as that like when they like started coming out of the snow and I was like that moment when Rare Exports becomes an A24 film. I don't know.
Yeah.
I feel like this movie, Mark, kind of feels a lot like Legend to me. The more that I talk about it, the more that I end up hating this movie just a little bit more.
Be glad you're in Richmond and I can't smack you for hating
So
Legend.
sorry. I'm so sorry. I'm so sorry. You know what? You'll be the black sheep on the Eyes Wide Shut episode. I'll be the black sheep on this episode. That's fine.
There you go.
I feel like I'm going to piss off a lot of people on that episode.
Well, that's what podcasts are for. They're for, having putting out your unfiltered opinions to the world. All the hot takes and everything.
Yeah, hot takes. I was not a fan of this movie. It was okay.
I liked it. I don't know if it's something that I would add to like my Christmas repertoire every year or anything, but I thought it was interesting. It definitely like provoked some thought. And apparently, this was originally a short film, although it's a pretty short film still.
Yeah, so this is actually there's two short films that this movie is from. The first one is 2003 Rare Exports Inc. and then 2005 it's Rare Exports the official safety instructions, both of which according to Wikipedia, both of which involve a company that traps wild Santa Clauses and trains and exports them to locations around the world, which
So, are we going with the fact that this movie endorses human trafficking?
that
I mean,
yeah, that's a good point.
the end of it is like, the good guys won and they managed to capture all the naked old men and, yeah,
Start
literally traffic
shipping them
them. And
around the world.
yeah, and that's the good outcome, right? That's like everybody's happy. The children are smiling about it. I did think that was a little odd. I don't know if that was on purpose.
I mean, at this point, I mean, Pietri has to have some sense of trauma because there's what two or three times where he quite literally walks in on his dad dismembering either a bear or an animal or a man. Like they're actually trying to
Well, the
see
man
why
part I
he's
could see be traumatizing, but I feel like in that kind of village and upbringing, the dismemberment and butchering of a animal would be somewhat normal.
Oh
Because
well, Bo wouldn't think so.
I'm pretty sure they're not going to the local grocery store to get meat.
well, yeah, obviously live quite a while.
But then again, no one's disturbed by the fact of them shipping old people around the world. So
I mean, the father tells the son, Peter, I'm just gonna call him Peter,
that's a
to
great compromise.
that's probably the Americanized version of his name, right? He tells him to close his eyes when he's butchering the animal at the beginning. So, but it's totally okay to ship human people.
Yeah, this movie gives the wrong message because I mean, look, we were all children, and tell parents tell us not to do something. You're like, oh, well, if I not to do it, there's got to be a reason. So you're just kind of peeking through your eyes, one eye open, and you're just like, well, what am I missing? Kind of you have that fear of FOMO really early on.
Yeah. Yeah, it honestly it makes you kind of want to do it more. And I mean you see that. There's multiple moments throughout the film where the dad tells Peter to not do this, stay here, stay there, and he doesn't listen a single time. I guess that worked out for everybody, but
The the day eventually ended up to human trafficking and I guess village peace for the village. It's just this movie's very, very bizarre. Let me just say that abyss gazing does not condone or support human trafficking in any way, shape, or form. So I
Yeah.
think they're just victims and villains because I mean it's a serious thing and like I don't know movies like this like kind of make really light of it and it's just kind of messed
Yeah.
up honestly.
I
Yeah, and
mean,
this came out in 2010.
I had heard a lot about this movie and how much people loved it. And I'm not saying it's a bad movie. It was a brainless fun movie, but I was
Yeah.
really surprised that when they talk about human trafficking these days, that this doesn't get mentioned at the end. Like, how could you put out a movie where they're like cashing in off shipping old men around the world for Christmas? What'd you get for
Yeah.
Christmas, son? I got an old man with a beard. It's yeah.
It's
At least they're closed
I mean,
when
it's up
they ship them
there.
out.
It's not as bad as like The Toy with Richard Pryor in the 80s, but still it's pretty bad.
what I think is
Yeah.
interesting is like in terms of like traumatic like movies, this movie came out the same year as one of the most controversial films with a Siberian film. And
A
that movie is
Serbian
Oh, yeah.
a
film?
Serbian film, yeah, that one.
Jesus.
That movie is constantly in
Yeah.
conversations. It's like a year away. It's like Human Centipede came either a year before or a year after this one. Um, yeah,
I
very
still
very weird.
I still haven't seen a Serbian film. I'm
I've
not
not
actually
seen
sure
it.
that I want to
Me neither.
because
I don't want to, but
I've heard
somebody
enough about it that it's like, do I really want to see this? Where with the human
right.
centipede, it was like, you have to watch the human centipede. Why? Just trust me, you have to watch the human centipede. Why? Don't worry about it. Just go watch it. That's kind
It's
of
not
how
even
that
that good.
it has the
Something tells
slowest
me
it has the slowest chase scene in like movie history.
I mean, a
that's
Serbian
what
film
you
is
remember from that one.
And feed her.
it
Feed her.
it's one of those films that, and I think The Human Centipede also is up there, but a Serbian film definitely is. I think it's one of those films though that like even though I don't necessarily want to see it, and I don't think that I'm going to like it or even kind of like see any kind of artistic value in it from what I've heard, it's still one of those movies that's like as a movie fan, as a guy on a movie podcast, I guess at some point I have to check it off the list. But
The crossover for next year has been done. A Serbian film and the Human Centipede. No. I've got some trivia for you guys here. So father and son in this movie, Pietro and Rano, however you say his name, are actually real life father and son. So they're real life offspring.
huh. And I thought that the relationship between them was one of the better done parts of this movie because you could tell that there's some issues, but you know, he genuinely cares about his kid and he wants to protect his kid. And you know what I mean? Even though he's a little, like, oh, let me just push you to the side.
And I can't always speak to this as a man, a still married with a living wife, not widowed or anything, would be also at the same time like uh you know not having any kids, but like I have plenty of friends who are single parents and they always kind of share their struggles and especially around this time of year with Christmas like I you could tell that like there are moments where the film like really shows the emotional baggage that he has as a father doing this and it kind of almost you could argue that like maybe mom died recently or left within like the last year and it's kind of almost seems like it's the first Christmas because you know he doesn't really seem to like know how to like operate as a
Yeah.
standalone parent the fact that like there are two meal sequences and he feeds his kid both times gingerbread cookies like as like the
Mhm.
substance and
Well, he
it's
burns
it's
during one of those scenes. He burns the bejesus out of the food.
He
yes,
did try to make something, right?
he
And
did.
Yeah, so it wasn't for lack of trying; it
Yeah,
was for lack of ability.
but
it
like
hammers home the fact that he's maybe recently a single parent. You know, there was kind of somebody else who was taking care of these kinds of things, and I'm one of those friends that you could that can relate to that, like you were saying. You know, single parent around Christmas time. There's definitely a struggle. Although, you know, mine isn't dead. You know, we're just not together. It's a little bit better, but
yeah, and I mean like I don't know. I have a lot of like you said, like it is rough and it kind of sucks to hear stories like that that come around this time of year where it's like, especially like with the last year, just with inflation and corporate greed, it just kind of seems like yeah, like, dude, I would be happy for people just to give me money for groceries, like, kind
for
of
real.
story.
Yeah, yeah. Some grocery money would be nice.
I
Uh,
don't think anybody refused that these
this
days.
is this happens to be one of Kate Blanchett's favorite movies of all time.
Huh.
Um, yeah,
Interesting.
the last trivia fact I will give you guys at 5 minutes and 45 seconds, there is an explosion on the mountain, and the resulting smoke takes on the form of two horns, foreshadowing later events in the movie.
Huh.
Which,
Well,
I
okay then.
didn't notice that, but if I ever rewatch this, I'll be on the lookout for it.
Mark, I feel like there's not a whole lot of other things that we can talk about in this movie. Is there anything else that like really stuck out to you that you want to talk about, or same question to you, Ash?
Um, I wonder why Santa had such a Krampus-like design.
I That's a great question because like the first time that they showed that, I was kind of like, oh, I am immediately intrigued because my wife and I just got to show my wife Krampus the other day for the first time,
Nice.
and she liked it. Go check out our episode on Krampus. But yeah, I was kind of curious about that too because I was like, this seems weird, and maybe it's a Finnish thing, maybe in Finland the concept of Santa is different than what it is here in America.
You know, I was kind of confused about that as well because when they were getting into some of the darker Santa stories, I was like, isn't that Krampus? Are they just like conflating the two figures? I don't know.
Maybe. Who knows? Who knows?
So according
But
to Google, um, one way to tell if you are dealing with the official Santa Claus of Finland is to look at his hat. Unlike the showy headpiece of his colleagues, his hat has a long,
Conical.
conical part decorated with a large red tuft at the end. Um, but yeah, I don't know.
I
It was a weird decision to do that.
yeah.
Well, okay then. I have no more questions.
Yeah. I'm like in a rabbit hole of what Finnish Santa looks like. But this is a different language. I did find something from a website called Ink Tank that discusses it, but it is in a different language. Um, so I don't know if you're a listener of the show and you happen to be from Finland, why does Santa look this way in this movie? But I think it's gonna do it for us on our portion of this year's Christmas crossover. But where can people find Collateral Cinema online?
You can find us wherever you get your podcasts. We are on Apple Podcasts, Spotify, YouTube, you name it. And if we're not somewhere, let us know so we can be there. You can check us out on social media: Facebook, Instagram, and Twitter. As mentioned previously, we are going to be doing our side of the Collateral crossover event with I just
Eyes wide
blanked
shut.
out. Eyes wide shut. Yes, yes. I don't know what happened there. I had a little brain fart.
Marijuana affects the memory.
Yes. That would be an explanation. Eyes wide shut, and also check out our episodes this month for Bad Movie December on Neil Breen's Twisted Pair and The Wicker Man, the one with Nicolas Cage. So that's gonna be a lot of fun. I'm sure, Josh, you're gonna be checking out the Wicker Man
Wicker
one.
Man, of course. Uh, yeah, so you guys can find us wherever you guys get your podcast from. Just look up Abyss Gazing, and you guys can follow our parent company, Victims and Villains. We are on Facebook, Instagram, Twitter, YouTube, and wherever you guys get your podcast from, as well as Patreon. Mark, where can people find you online?
Not really doing much at the moment. So
He's modest. Go follow his painting stuff. He's awesome.
yeah, Titanium Juggernaut painting on Instagram whenever I start posting paintings again.
Nice.
Well, he was working on something before we started recording tonight, so who knows?
Yeah.
But yeah, so you guys can follow me. I am on Letterbox at Captain Nostalgia, and you guys can follow me on my other podcast. As Ash said, I'm a huge Nicolas Cage fan, so of course I'm the co-host of our Nick Cage podcast. That's High Praise. We'll be back in the new year. This is the last episode for us this year, 2023. So thank you guys for listening from the start of this year, covering Megan all the way and now. Thank you guys for being along for the weird, wonderful world of abyss gazing. We'll see you guys next year. And remember, the longer you gaze into the abyss, the more the abyss gazes back into you. Have a good night.